Cal State East Bay, Real Estate Valuation, Team 1, Take 1, and Action.
Hey, this is Mohammed Peter Hector, and we did the essence of analysis, a fundamental methodology, and starting point for investment.
And speak loud, and speak up really loud and punch your words.
Makes sense. So the essence of analysis, what is market analysis? What type of studies do they perform in study analysis? And what does the subject have to do with this class? Basic market analysis, analysis of local economies, studies of fundamental determinants of the demand for all real estate in the market. Market analysis, studies for the demand for supply of a particular property type in the market. Marketability analysis examines the specific development or property to assess its competitive position in the market. And feasibility analysis, which evaluates a specific project as to whether it is likely to be carried out successfully if pursued under a proposed program. It may be related to development. Most often it's related to financial feasibility. And investment analysis. And that evaluates the specific property as a potential investment. Usually incorporates specific financing in the analysis to evaluate alternative financing options and to select the most appropriate financing or consideration of income tax, emphasis on risk, reward, sensitivity analysis, and internal rate of return. Basic market analysis, private versus public analysis. In the private sector, market analysis is used to maximize profits and reduce losses. In the public sector, market analysis is used towards goals that impact density, traffic, or design. The analyst cannot fall in love with the project and remain objective. Basic market analysis. Laptop.
I think you should reboot that top projector. I think you have to reboot the projector so it'll shoot the image out.
What I did last time was just click the off and then turn it back on.
Yeah.
On the,
Oh, there you go.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's weird, it times out every time you're in the middle of a presentation.
I think you're going to have to
Yeah.
reconnect it because it probably lost the connection to the laptop.
Somebody,
No, just
do I pull out the HDMI and put it back in?
Yeah.
They should,
Is that what I did?
That's what I did.
Is that what you did?
Yeah. Close back.
you should just open your Google Doc on that screen.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn on.
Can you go check this out? You seem to have like a magic touch.
It's right. Oh. Oh no, he just blanked it.
I don't know why it has no.
It's just a setting on the projector. They have everything. You just have to physically I don't know how to do that.
Can you do it from like up there? I mean, on the software, can you extend the time period?
I think it's
It's like that in every classroom.
Yeah, you have to tell IT
Yeah.
fix it, because I think
Yeah.
something internal that they have to
Yeah,
do. Yeah.
In the summer, one class, we couldn't even get it back on in this room.
Yeah, because they're all timed as a switch for something.
oh, there you go.
Nope, we're back to square one.
Why don't you just go to
Yeah.
Firefox and open your email on there?
Yeah, you should just try this. Or is it Gmail?
Do you have it in a Google?
Oh, yeah.
It's on Google Drive.
You keep on.
I don't know if it's called giving up or
What?
I just lost the computer.
Yeah, otherwise they don't save it, you know, your cookies.
I don't know, want to stick my email. Shoot.
You guys have any questions?
Don't forget when you, after the first slide, put a, what was the major thing that you learned, and what was the major thing that you want the audience to take away?
So that's what I thought, I thought that's what we did with the second slide.
Oh, did you? Okay.
So like we ask the questions, like so that way we can get you thinking about what we're going to discuss.
Well, it should be just one slide, and then you go into an outline.
Okay.
So the first slide should be, here's what we learned, and here's what you need to take away from this.
Okay.
Okay? So it's a major takeaway. What was of the chapter, what was the most important concepts that you took away from there that we should all know about?
Cool.
How awesome. You got it.
Take two.
What?
Take two.
Yeah. You want it? Now just keep going.
Cut it out.
We can always just scroll forward in each of us. But we will do take two.
Go to the present button.
Oh, there, yeah. Thank you.
Not a problem.
Okay, Cal State East Bay Real Estate Valuation,
Yeah.
Team 1, Take 2, and Action.
All right. So we have the basic market analysis, feasibility, and investment. What is the location, the space, the market area? We also have investment analysis, important consideration, how to define accurate analyst work will be. Market analysis is a collective process. It includes identification of timing for demand, the direct relationship between demand and supply, and calculations of investment rates of return. All right.
Oh, this is controlling your website. Okay, so market study and feasibility distinctions. All market analysts should focus on three areas of evaluation: the site, the demand for the product, and the supply. In the final form, market analysis may be published in either a market study or a feasibility study. And the market study aims to answer these 5 questions. Is there adequate market demand? Is there a market demand for improvements? How will the development be paid for? What competitive developments exist? How do we compete? And what factors affect our determination of the market? For the feasibility study, it focuses on the financial aspects, and it aims to answer these questions here. And really what any investor should be a little skeptical in any investment that they're offered. So your feasibility study really wants to convince the investor that this is actually a good investment. And there's 4 steps to the market analysis. The market area, this is the range in which supply and demand operates. And I'll go a little more into market area. You want to identify where markets exist. Obviously, you don't want to be making investments in places where you don't have markets. How will the new project affect existing projects? Be aware of historical patterns of development based on ethical or cultural ties. So you obviously don't want to get into a real estate investment where you're going to be building and say you're going to be building something specifically like an Asian grocery store, but you're going to be building it in a Hispanic neighborhood. That doesn't make sense, right? And be cautious of making assumptions. And the next step is site evaluation. Site evaluation should include comparative analysis site to site of physical properties. And you want to be careful for zoning and potential resistance. With zoning, you want to make sure whatever you're building is zoned in that area. You don't want to show to investors that you're going to build an apartment complex and it's going to be so great, and you're going to have all this money you're making, and then you find out it's zoned for industrial buildings. So your whole plan's gone. And potential resistance, you can meet government resistance, you can meet people in the community who don't want that type of business there.
And then let me talk about the topography. It's really important too, because it's really expensive to build on the hillsides. And it's going to take, you got to do the geologic studies. It's called the soil. You got to do the soil reports. You're going to do a phase 1 and a phase 2. That basically looks at either contamination, but you got to look at the actual geology in what you're going to be building. In my neighborhood in Pacifica, they've been trying to build on this hillside where our house is, and every single project that's been built has totally failed because of the type of soil condition that they're trying to build on, and they've never built on that kind of stuff. So it's really important to do all of that stuff. Thank you very much.
And another part of the market analysis is the demand factor. Demand may be a factor of current zoning, inventory of land zoned in the manner and the boundaries of an urban area. There's political demand, which relates to potential resistance, because political demand can be, it's not the same as economic demand. For example, people could want something to be built in their community, but certain politicians could say, hey, we don't want this, and they're going to give you pushback, even though the economic demand is there. There's also the existing supply factor. There are 3 specific kinds of real estate supply: already built, under construction, and proposed. And a lot of times the proposed is just to get an idea, like a feel of the market. If you propose an idea of who's willing to invest, are there going to be people willing to take up the real estate that you build?
So value feasibility, what is value feasibility? Like market analysis, it focuses on the study of a project, but feasibility study is more specifically to the financial part. It focuses on how much you're going to put in, how much you're going to go into construction, and all the expenses and all the profit that you're going to get. Feasibility should not translate into intent to show that there are no risks. This is for like investors. If you're trying to get investments and trying to get people to buy this project, you shouldn't give them data that's gonna affect on the project, like trying to make them buy your project. Presents a pro forma version of what is expected to occur during the acquisition, construction, completion, tenancy, and eventual sale of the project. So it's just an overall number of, it's a numbers pretty much of data. Value feasibility study, you have to have the right chemistry with the different people that you're working with and work with the different players with the construction. Feasibility are based on the market study. Since it is based on the market study, it has to be on a specific zone that you're analyzing for. The real test of feasibility is achieved when an outside independent consultant looks at the same questions objectively. So if you're analyzing an area and it's all through your team, some of these information could be biased because you're trying to make the project work, so you're just trying to look at it in an optimistic way, compared to where you get outside information, trying to match your numbers and be more realistic towards the problem. Who uses market analysis? Market analysis is utilized throughout the project industry by architects and engineers and the project planning team. And it's mostly just to be on the same page of where the money is going and where the numbers are adding up or where we're losing money. The most effective market analysis studies are those that meet the needs and answers the questions of all parties. If a party goes into a project meeting and is trying to get some data, but some of his questions are not unanswered, the risk of him buying the project kind of increases since you haven't fulfilled the goals of that specific party. The good and the bad on the studies, the analyst must remain objective, so that means he cannot play favor of just trying to sell the project. Take caution, if any, when the developer's objectives are not clearly defined. This could lead to wrong analysis. If the objective is not clearly defined, that means that either they're trying to upsell you something, or their math doesn't make sense, and it's somewhere along the feasibility study, which kind of could change the project dramatically in the future. The study should be performed as a team. Like I said, if you work individually, there's so much numbers going through the study that you might lose one little percent that could change the overall analysis completely. Like the cap rate, a small percentage change could dramatically change that overall analysis. Many projects suffer from fragments development planning. That means the idea wasn't fully met. It was more towards objective, not towards like overall goal planning future-wise. Lack of strong personal damages the process of market analysis. So lack of strong personnel damages the process of market analysis. So if someone isn't really confident of themselves and has bad numbers for the upper guy, if he isn't really self-confident, tell him, hey, you know what, these numbers aren't good for the company, but only gives out good news, will damage the company in future references. So if the numbers are bad and you feel that the numbers are correct, always go with your gut, because it might cost you your job later on. The good and the bad on the studies, inadequate analysis of indirect economic forces such as environmental, social, and political. This is mostly to where Peter was talking about. If an investment might seem good, but what are your surrounding neighbors saying about it? Like one of the biggest impact is what the people that your neighborhood is trying to. If they agree with the plan or they don't. Using best case numbers, this is trying to make a good analysis and trying to present it to your investors by giving good numbers, trying to kind of oversell the product. Ignoring the importance of sensitivity analysis and underestimation of infrastructure costs. So you might read the numbers wrong on materials and labor, and you might give a number that's way below of what it's actually gonna take to build such a project, and which could kind of impact the big guy up there, you know, trying to lie and give him big numbers, but in the end, he comes out to paying double the price for that project. Inadequate analysis, particularly of cash flow. This is where you keep track of the money going in and going out. If you lose track of the money, you don't know how much money is going into a project or how much money you're going to get returned in that project. So it is important to always document the money going into the projects or going out. Excessive use of statistics without any hard realistic conclusion. This kind of goes back to being biased about the numbers. It's always good to double check with other teams than just going off of what you got, because sometimes you might see, okay, this is a good project, I'm gonna try to sell it to them. Let's see. Failure to edit data properly. This is important when trying to keep communication with the whole team. If you edit a document or any type of analysis, it is important to share it with the whole players or team around you, because some small change might affect another team dramatically. conclusion drawn on numbers out of lacking consumer service. So sometimes the numbers that you get through analysis is different what consumer surveys first tell. So it is always important to go by consumer surveys because those are where your main profit is going to come out of. So if you analyze and it says that you're going to get good revenue, but yet your consumer survey is kind of like going against that, it is always helpful to go with consumer surveys. Over evaluation of land and a failure of critically assets management. Those are pretty big with feasibility analysis. And I think that was it. Do you guys have any questions on those slides?
And then just make sure at the end of the presentation that you just kind of wrap up and here are the major takeaways.
Okay. Yeah, so market analysis, like Peter said, is mostly overall economic of what's going on around that project, where to feasibility analysis is more direct on the financial point of the project. So they're both analyzing the project, but in two different categories.
That was great. You guys got thrown under the bus first.